Welcome to the Tech Savvy Professor podcast, where two faculty explore how technology supports academic life. I'm Marty from Kent State University, co-coordinator of the Masters in Counseling program.
And I'm Eric Perry, program director at Divine Mercy University for the Masters of Science in Counseling.
So anything new this week for you? We did a little talk off camera that was, I think, cathartic in terms of program coordination. Oh yeah, you think my story's bad? Your story's bad? Let me tell you my story.
Right.
So it's been outside of that, anything new in terms of technology or teaching or stuff that you're messing around with?
Not a lot, actually. I aside from administrative stuff, things are slowing down a little bit, which I'm actually excited about. It's going to give me some time, I think, to look at some new kind of fun stuff in the classes. We talked about some stuff last week that I really want to take a look at, AI tools. I am doing a pilot for an AI note-taking program. Mm-hmm. So looking at a couple of those. That's more related to my clinical work, though. So yeah, not a whole lot right now, but I'm hoping things slow down enough with the holidays approaching that I can start tinkering a little.
Yeah, you have to look for the joy in little ways. And for me, last night I was teaching advanced theories. And what I do with advanced theories in counseling is I go back and do a lot of historic stuff. Mm-hmm. So we go through a lot of old approaches, things that fell off the cart that were popular in the 70s and 80s. And I think students are surprised in terms of the history because we were talking about radical psychiatry or radical therapy, which very akin to things like social justice and very akin to things like diversity, equity, inclusion, and other types of liberation psychology. And I had a moment where, because somebody else was presenting, we sit in a large circle of tables, and people just started cross-talking with conversation and really getting into something that I think most people don't know about and really appreciating getting an opportunity to learn about it. So I had that, okay, so this is what teaching's about. And I complimented the class at the end of the class saying, this is this immediate experience I had watching you talk about these things and how history for me is so important that we never get to it in terms of our field. And you guys are just soaking it up and getting into some good, deep discussions about it. So that was pleasant. It had nothing to do with technology, but was a pleasant experience for me. It was the palate cleanser that I needed for the day that I had. And then coming up tomorrow on the day that we record this, so it would be on the 12th, Apple is doing a seminar, workshop. It's a 1-hour thing, so I don't think it's really deep, on how to use the Vision Pro in the classroom in an education. Okay. And that's the first time I've seen them do anything in that direction with that device. So I've signed up for it, and I'll listen to it or watch it tomorrow as they do it, because I have that hour free during the day to do it, and see if there's anything I can pull in from VR, AR headsets that are meaningful in terms of class. So that's sort of my tech fun thing this week.
Yeah, we'll get a next show update.
Yeah. I'll tell you what they had to say, if it's all kind of perfunctory stuff that look at the three-dimensional thing you can look at, or if there seems to be actually a learning integration as part of it. But today's topic is real-time polls and quizzes, ways in which in the classroom we can use these things. Now, I would imagine there's a portion of our audience that knows about these things already, and there's a portion of our audience that, this is neat. Maybe I want to look at these things. Have a bunch of links in the show notes that you can pick up either in the audio or video version of this episode. I fall into the latter. I know about these things, or maybe a combination of both. I know about these things, but I don't use them in my classroom. So we're going to dive into these classroom polling and quiz apps and get an opportunity to see how, Eric, you integrate them. I've done a few of these in certain places, and I'll interject that. But for those watching the video, yeah, we're going to be able to show you some of the websites for these. But again, all of the show notes will be in there. All of the links will be in the show notes. So I'm going to start with Poll Everywhere. Eric, do you have anything to say about Poll Everywhere?
Yeah, Poll EV, as it used to be called,
Yeah.
was one of my first forays into this. Um, that and Kahoot were probably the two I used the most. I like Poll EV. It gives you a lot more options than kind of your standard polling software. Works great synchronously. Um, it was designed for that purpose. I'm interested in the 2.0 version because I haven't used this since, I don't know, it's been at least a couple of years. Um, but as I recall, when I did use it, it was a really kind of user friendly, easy way to jump into this. So developing the questions is easy. People can participate using almost any electronic connected device. It gives you a link, and they answer those questions in real time, and then you can see and display their results in different ways. So I loved Poll EV.
Yeah. I'm looking at, for those folks who are listening, pricing. You can do a 30-day Teams trial where you can get an opportunity to use all the bells and whistles on it, and also, sort of for large audiences and more AI prompts, you can get the $10 a month, which is billed at 120 annually. So or yeah, I'm switching the switch on here. There are some changes depending on whether you do a monthly bill or a annual bill in some of this. But I have my experience with it. One of the things that I was involved in for 14 years, 15 years was students, teachers coming from international countries to the U.S., to Kent State, to learn about different teaching methods and sort of ways in which we teach and integrate stuff. A big part of that was technology. So we did a lot of things with technology, but one of the things we covered were some of the apps that we're going to talk about today. So my familiarity comes from having to teach it more than having to integrate it within classrooms that I've been teaching. So I'm familiar with Poll Anywhere. It's probably, you also mentioned Kahoot. We'll get to that in a minute. Those are probably the two. Nearpod, Socrates, those are probably the two things that I am, or the ones that I'm more familiar with by name. Have you tried Mentimeter?
I have not.
Get everyone participating in meetings, classes, or trainings with tools built for interaction and enhanced AI that will spark your engagement. Turn
Sounds appealing.
presentations, yeah, turns presentations into questions. Ask interactive questions.
It's a cool use of AI,
Yeah.
to pull that out of presentations.
Um, and different kinds of pricing. Free, there's a basic, and you can look at that. It's Mentimeter. I'm not familiar with it, haven't used it before, but we will have that link for you as an option to look at. Kahoot.
Love Kahoot. Kahoot's probably one of my favorites just because it's based around having fun. Um, the colors are engaging. There's characters. It is a little juvenile, but I think that's kind of the point. Um, there's a couple of different ways you can make quizzes, polls. Um, I actually used it in career counseling as we
Hmm.
started to get through some of the career theories. These things are not exciting. Career is not what most people would consider an exciting course, but there are elements of it that you really want them to know because they're relevant for national examinations. So asking them questions this way and having them compete against each other was a fun way to practice learning about the theories and the content. And something that interested me about your story earlier, Marty, was that I'd always throw in a really obscure theory for them to practice with, some obscure questions to ask that I didn't teach them, just as like the tiebreaker questions.
Ah,
So we had a lot of fun with that because you can do a lot with the graphics and backgrounds and things here too. So one that I would always ask them about was, oh, I'll have to think of it. This is a really obscure.
so
It's so
obscure you
obscure.
can't.
I can't recall. But it was a lot of fun for that. I think also this is something that's been used for a while now. So you might actually find that your undergraduate students, if you use this in school, and even
Yeah.
some of your graduate students are comfortable with the platform as a user, it's really popular with teachers in K-12.
Yeah, I used it in family therapy. And because we're covering a series of theories each week, and in order to do some of the things that I want to do in class, students have to have a basic grasp of the theory. So this
Mm-hmm.
was kind of a fun way to confirm that they had done the reading. And sometimes we'd put together teams where they'd compete. You have a competitive edge for that. But yeah, that is one of my uses of Kahoot. The teachers that I work with used it extensively. They were
Yeah,
working in secondary schools. I used it, I think, during COVID, really, to try and get some engagement online around family therapy, family theories. So
I
yeah,
found it.
yeah, you found
I
it. What
found it.
was it?
It's chaos theory of career counseling.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is
Um,
pretty interesting, but I don't think it's anything anybody actually uses. So it was
okay,
fun to ask about.
my first professional presentation was at an ACA conference in Denver, and they
Mhm.
had the room set up for 180 people, and I was like nervous little doctoral student. No one else was doing this with me, and it was called Chaos Theory in Counseling. And I thought this was just a kind of mind thing I put together. This would have been back in 94, 95. And I put this thing together and thought, okay, I'll do a presentation on it. And every time I walked past the room, there was like 10 people filling this auditorium full of 180. And I said, I'm like, surely I'm not going to have to worry about a large crowd. I had handouts for everybody because, that was the day you had to bring handouts for everybody.
Mhm.
And when my presentation came about, for some reason, that topic clicked and the room was full. I had standing room only talking about chaos theory and counseling, which was just something I pulled out of my butt. It
It's
wasn't
because it
really
sounds
anything.
cool.
And so, yeah, I mean, when you talk about chaos theory being obsolete or being abstract in career counseling, I get it. I understand
Yeah,
where that could be put together. So, all right, let's get back to the technology. Slido. Have you used Slido?
I haven't. No.
Oh man, it is so cool. I've got to share with you. I found out about this when I was watching. I was at Macstock and watching one of the presenters use it to kind of do a poll essentially of the whole audience on certain topics. The thing about Slido is that you can put it right in your PowerPoint slides. So it will then give them a QR code that will link, and then you have the link that comes back on your PowerPoint and gives the results in whatever fashion you want. So for live presentations, it's kind of fun. I did it after I saw somebody use it. I was like, "Ooh, okay, I'm presenting tomorrow," and I sat in the audience and tried to adapt my presentation to include Slido, because what I wanted to do was do a serious poll, but then give silly results. Because it
Okay.
was, you know, it was like, what is the thing that our Mac user group talks about most? And people were using Slido and putting in like email, photos, all the sorts of stuff. And my response was, well, what's on sale at Costco? You know, these are the things that my Mac user group talks about most. Because I was trying to make the point that we need, you know, getting focus in dealing with kind of difficult issues in a user group. But Slido was my ticket out, and I've used it a couple of times since for live presentations to have some fun with it. So yeah, take a look at it's Slido SLIDO.com.
Yeah, definitely.
Socrates. I think I'm presenting it right. Have you used Socrates?
I've not, but I looked at it a little bit before the show, and it's interesting.
Yeah. It's reduces repetitive work, lets you spend time actually teaching. Instant question feedback, reflex and reports can be exported, and you can get a sense of how people are doing by reviewing what you have put together as a question and an answer, question and answer kind of thing.
What I would like to see and didn't see here that I think would be interesting is if there's any LMS integration. This would be really neat to do kind of during a live synchronous class and have some points attached to it or something. I'll have to dig around a little bit.
I
I'd
would
like to.
bet that, yeah, this would be something you could do in Google Classroom. I'm looking to see if there's anything on LMS integration. Yeah, this is another popular one that that students enjoyed. Now the teachers that I worked with were interested in free, not pricing. They didn't have the funds, nor did their school districts that they were or school systems that they were returning to have the funds. There were a few teachers we came from that came over from very lucrative schools that this would not have been an issue, but always trying to find tools that they could start with or test out. And you know, my issue about that was if it's a tool that you're really going to use, you might
Mhm.
benefit from trying to seek some funding from the principal or someone to be able to pay for the license for it so it can be used. So yeah, Socrative, get real-time results on students' understanding, adjust lessons, and engage every student in the moment. So, quizzes. This is one I hadn't seen before. Is now Wayground. Okay, quizzes is now Wayground. So wayground.com. And we can spark curiosity, even think about in every lesson. This
Yeah,
sort of, yeah, go ahead.
looks like they have a lot of kind of previously developed content for K-12, but they also have an AI generator, presentation maker, rubric generator, lesson plan generator. Some of these could be pretty neat. I'd be interested to try that out.
Yeah, a lot of this looks K through 12. There's some, I'm looking at the math stuff right now. It goes into multivariate calculus, linear algebra, and these are libraries that you have. And I'm not sure we have it, but I will put it in. I don't see it in our series of links. Quizlet. Are you familiar with Quizlet?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Quizlet has, I used it. It can be done similar, creating quizzes. They also have libraries in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've even gone in there and found libraries on counseling questions for like reviews for the licensure exam. People have put together decks in there
Mm-hmm.
that can be used for that purpose. I used it in a Quizlet in a kind of a unique way because I was looking for basically flashcards for these teachers coming over that that they would send me a picture of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Then of course I had their country and I had their name, and I tried to turn that into a flashcard process. And I'm trying to go into Quizlet to show some of these things. So let me switch to screen. So this is, for example, the Quizlet that I put together for it. You know, the top ones are the teachers that they're going to experience when they come over. And then
Mm-hmm.
as you get into lower on, you see pictures of the teachers that are coming over from different countries. And so it allowed them, and this has a great phone app, it allowed them to be able to use the app and learn all the names and associate it with faces. Now, the interesting part is they're coming from different parts of the world, but they're generally winding up going through a couple of major airports to get to the US. And they would go and be on there, and they're all coming in a 24-hour period of time. So they would all come and they'd wind up getting to an airport and recognize their colleague that they had never seen from another country because they were learning their names and faces on Quizlet. So they would like go over and then start the conversation. You're coming to Kent? Yeah, we're coming to Kent. Where'd you come from? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, kind of a fun way for that I figured out on how to use Quizlet. But at the same time, you can create study decks for students on it. You can create, all sorts of topical libraries are available with Quizlet. And I'll put that in.
So one other one I wanted to mention really quickly is that we didn't have on the list was Blookit.
All right.
This is another popular K-12 one. If you're looking for like bare bones quiz, quick setup, they use it as a way to study. It feels very similar to Kahoot, but it's Blooket. It's free to create things, takes minutes, and my kids use it a lot to create their own study guides and quizzes for each other. Um, so that's one I would suggest you check out too if you're just looking for a quick quiz kind of thing. There are some like expanded features and tiers that'll get you more kind of gamification, I think, out of it with the additional features. So they have more game modes and you can host larger games. But it's another interesting one if you're looking for ease of use and quick setup. Look, it takes no time at all.
Have you ever used Nearpod?
No, I have not.
Nearpod is another kind of app that I wound up working with the international students with. Nearpod, and I think one of the qualities of it is, so you have an issue. You've got students in your classroom and they've all got their devices out, and you have no sense of what they're doing. And I remember going and doing a site visit for a program, accreditation site visit, and they were showing, and I looked, they let us in from the back of the classroom. This was a technology room, and the instructor was up there teaching something that had to do with graphs. And you could see from the back of the room all of the computer monitors, and half of them were on games or solitaire, or they were completely ignoring what was going on in terms
Right.
of the lecture. It's not like they were following along. Nearpod allows you to follow along. So you get all of your students on a Nearpod link that you have, and then that can take them through whatever integrative or interactive type of experience that you're doing. So even if you're just presenting PowerPoints and lecturing, that's the kind of the minimalist thing that you can do. You can have everybody on the same page, which I thought was pretty cool. And I was working with, again, secondary school teachers, so they found use for Nearpod as an option. So
Yeah, it's
and
interesting.
yeah, apparently you can do things with Google Forms that are also much more interactive. There's a live mode for Google Forms, which will allow you to do some of this survey kinds of things with Google Forms. And I think that takes us through all of the tools that we were going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm just kind of a bonus one. So Zoom polls and quizzes. There's a feature in Zoom. They recently updated. I'd say within the last 6 months or so, they changed their polls and added a couple of different options to do live quizzes and polls. Used to be really clunky, but seems like it works pretty well.
Yeah,
Used to be that you had to create them ahead of time, but now you can actually create them as you're in the Zoom room if you need to. I've done that a few times now with scheduling things. Trying to get everybody on the same page if I need to shift an
right.
internship meeting or something like that. I would check those out if you're using Zoom as your platform for delivery.
So are there ways that you see that these things help in the classroom?
Yeah, I've always been a proponent of the more interactivity you have, the better. Um, I tend to not lecture for more than 15 or 20 minutes without doing something.
Right.
So I like these for that kind of engagement. I think when there's a little competition, it can create some fun in the classroom. So, often I'll divvy folks up to be on different teams and score differently. And um, a lot of the time it's like, whose line is it anyway? The points really don't matter, but it's the engagement and the time.
Yeah.
It's helpful for me with extremely dry topics, making them a little more interesting, or when I really want them to remember things, I want to expose it to them in as many forms as I can. They get to hear it from me, they get to engage with it. I think it can really kind of shake things up.
Yeah, I realized that when I used these kinds of things in classrooms, I'm a serious educator. I don't play games with little animated cartoon characters. I'm a serious educator. All you have to do is listen to the words coming out of my mouth, and then you will become educated too. I'll tell you the few times I've set up Kahoots for my classes and sort of doing, a gamification of knowledge. Like, do I really want the little fox? Do I really want to, I'm like, come on. This looks like kid stuff. The students loved it,
Right.
so I was overestimating the seriousness of the educational process by not wanting to do these tools. And then when I did these tools for warm ups to get the class going around a particular topic, they responded so well to it. And they even commented on that. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, thank you. Still
Well,
feels goofy to me.
I think there's a whole theory around this, Marty. So like this is my coffee shop theorem,
Okay.
right? I think how coffee shops have gotten popular and survived are based on the fact that, and I think there's a popular comedian does a whole skit on this, but the fact that people don't like coffee, they like desserts. So like
Yeah.
all these different coffees they're not coffee at a certain point. It's not coffee anymore, right?
Right.
Like it's become something else. And we don't want to admit that we go there for something sugary and fun that's essentially like dessert. So, like, I do think there is this element of adults kind of want to have a good time too. And I think when you think about like memories that hold an impression or create a connection to content, it can be through those fun experiences in the same way. So, I'm all about having the tweed jacket. I can't do a bow tie, but you know,
Yeah.
like that it doesn't cheapen the material by having a good time with it. I actually think it helps
Yeah.
them connect with it better.
Hey, if you really want to feel like an academic, walk into the classroom with a fedora on. Fedora
Fedora.
set like a whole different image from an academic standpoint. And I don't have a deer stalker. I have another kind
Mm.
of brimmed hat that's like a large fedora brimmed hat that I got in Ireland. And those interchange during the winter months. I've just started wearing it. So, the other thing is anonymous polls. It's
Mm.
like I really want to know how much time people have spent looking at the material before I start to talk on it.
Uh,
And the idea of them being able to do an anonymous poll and me not being able to figure out who's who in the poll to find out that only 2% or 20% of the people in the class actually read the assigned article or looked at the chapter. I don't know what that does. I mean, I do I then lecture on the material they should have had, and then that becomes the new benchmark, or do I continue with my process knowing that 80% of the people don't have the basic content?
well, I think it allows you the opportunity to adapt. So I like it for that. I do think anonymous polls too are good for those questions that folks are just not going to ask, but could be really vital.
Yeah.
I do want to like give a little caution around this though. I've seen folks use this for things like um, multicultural and diversity courses and topics, and understand that you also can't control the responses,
Yeah.
right? Like you need to be able to view them before you display them. So if you're doing something live that is anonymous that you're also sharing without validating those responses, you run a little bit of a risk of not being able to identify if there's a problematic behavior or response. I get in graduate school that's not as big of an issue, but it does happen more often than I thought it would.
Hmm.
Um, and I've seen it play out poorly in some of the activities that folks have planned. So, with a grain of caution around the topics that you use and allow them to respond to anonymously because you'll need to attend to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, because be careful what you ask for, particularly
Sure.
with some of these sensitive topics. You might get some things that are like, and then if it's visible to the whole class, then it's something you've got to deal with.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Any other things that you'd like to add on this?
No, I think it's a lot of the tools that we mentioned, we're talking about like 5-10 minutes to learn how to do
Yeah.
and 5 to 10 minutes to set up. You can get as intricate as you want, but I think most of the things we've talked about here can be done really quickly and make a bigger difference than you think with minimal investment in terms of the students' enjoyment of the content in the course.
Yeah. And, I'm always kind of trying to get material together for classes. Each time I teach, generally it's on the weekend, I'll sit and take an hour or two to put material together. This is maybe an extra 15 minutes if you want to plug that into a class and some
Mhm.
thought about doing it. So, yeah, this has inspired me to try and do some more with this and with these different platforms. and would encourage listeners or viewers to do the same thing too. I got one story. I got lots of stories, but I got one story about this.
Yeah.
I was a new assistant professor in Columbia, South Carolina. And in Columbia, they opened like a space museum. It was all Coke money, as I like to say. It was built on Coca-Cola money. And the high point of it from an educational standpoint was we were all in a theater, and each of our seats reclined a little bit, and there was a 4-button panel on it. And the person doing the lecture, the presentation, was posing questions to us as a group. And we had to choose A, B, C, or D by pressing the right button in. And I played along for the first couple of questions, but by the third or fourth question, I would put in the wrong answer just because the data would come up on the screen. And I knew, it's just totally weird response.
Just mess with the system, yeah.
To mess with the system. Now, that's the first level of messing with the system and the lecturer. The second level is that I could change it in real time. So while he's talking about some facts about the moon and I've got the wrong answer, I can switch it to the right answer. Or if I have the right answer, I can switch it to the wrong answer while he's talking about it. So it was like, I don't know, that it was like you need to have these things locked in. At some point, people can't change them because, I beat the system with that way. And at one point, he realized that I was changing my right answer to my wrong answer. And he kind of said, now stop that.
You got in trouble.
I got in trouble, but it was anonymous, so he couldn't tell who was doing it.
Right.
So, yeah. That was my first brush with these technologies. And, of course, my first attempt was to figure out how to break the system. So, anyway.
Yeah. So kind of a cautionary tale if you're trying to use these for reliable data. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, that's it for this show, this episode of The Tech Savvy Professor. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and all major podcast services. Our bumper music is by Philip Gross, Rast, from the Free Music Archive. Thanks for doing this, Eric. This is fun, sitting and having this conversation. And thanks for the listeners and viewers who are looking at this. You can always email us at thepodtalknetwork@gmail.com if you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover. Our website is thepodtalk.net, and our YouTube channel, if you want to watch past videos of our episodes, you can find it at www.youtube.com/@TechSavvyProfessor. And you can find all of the stuff on the YouTube channel. And again, also at thepodtalk.net. That's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us on The Tech Savvy Professor.